basically the primary thing that I do is I try to figure out what is it that's actually going to be, the what did they do before they're an adventurer, right?
Hmm.
In second edition, it's very obvious what that is, but it's a little bit more murky in first edition. But you you had a life before you were an adventurer in most cases. It could be just you were 15 or you hit 15 and you're like, boom, I'm an adventurer. But you did something before that. You had parents, you had siblings, you had a town that you lived from, that you lived in, events that happened to you that actually, defined who you are as a person.
Hmm.
So the biggest thing about it is you want a background that gives you a skill that develops your character. So a good example is I have a ranger that I've started. Why is he a ranger? What is his background that led him into becoming a ranger? What does he have family of rangers? Is it one of the things that he's had to fend for himself and learned how to be a ranger? Um, Mechanically, that can also be helpful if you're trying to make a character fit into a certain role. So, for instance, okay, I want to make a character that is, um, knowledgeable about a certain thing. Okay, I'm
Hmm.
really pushing to get, my knowledge arcana set up, and I want to be able to roll arcana. There are backgrounds to give you that, but then you're going to have to justify it in your backstory. And that's, there's nothing saying that you can't make a, fighter that has, was trained as a scholar and just decided one day, oh, an orc attack happened and now I should switch to being a fighter.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And that's a fun way to make it more dynamic is basically ensuring that your character isn't a collection of stats, that they came from somewhere. They just didn't emerge from the void fully formed.
Yeah.
As a
Yeah.
like I just walked out one day of the fighter factory and haha.
Well, that's
Again,
the
unless you're playing an
That's the
android.
android
Yeah.
in you.
Yeah.
Going back around to that.
Yeah.
Does anybody else have any input that they want to bring in for the background?
I believe we are a spellcaster of some
We,
form or fashion.
we haven't decided what kind yet.
Okay, so divine or arcane. Very well.
Okay.
We've also
So,
covered
looking-
ancestry so far as well as background.
But I don't know if we've actually picked any of those.
We
We have
haven't
not
picked
picked one
any.
yet.
So if
Yes.
people want to kind of
What do you
toss
say,
out our
Rob?
ancestry.
Okay, so a few people had been looking at that before we switched over to Twitch. Let me go through some of the selections we've got so far. Let's see here. That's location. Sorry, I went up too far.
We've
Let's
gone too
see.
far.
We've got a Damp Fear from a Cursed Family. That was a selection. And then
Somebody just put in changeling.
Yeah, Cursed Family showed up again too, so I'm thinking that'll be a background.
Well, do
Yeah.
we want to, since some people may be joining right now, do we want to finish talking about class and then we can address ancestry, background, and class as one thing if you want to toss some of those ideas down in the comments?
I think it was a funny suggestion, but an android mummy.
Ooh.
Let's see here. Yeah.
Ooh. That's
I
fun.
mean, I like animal whispering just for,
We've
flavor.
got a couple of folks talking about Animal Whisperer, so that's an interesting background for Ustalaw specifically,
Yeah.
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 but also Cursed Family. So yeah.
Okay.
Well, how about we
who's
tackle
gonna-
class real quick? So,
Yeah, let's
Russ,
tackle
would you
class
be
real
able to talk about class some?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
Or
sorry
Jessica.
again about kind of.
No. Keep going.
Okay. Right. Let's get to class then. I'm gonna take you to school. Apparently. I'm hilarious in my own head anyway.
Yep.
So right
Teacher
now we're
leaves them kids
gonna
alone.
primarily be talking about the core 12 classes, mostly because those are what are out in 2E so far, aside from the playtest for the Advanced Player's Guide stuff.
Soon,
yes. Now, for each class, you do need to choose. You usually get a number of choices. We're going to refer to these as subclasses just for the sake of our discussion here. But these cover everything from bloodlines to instincts to rackets to all that different stuff that you get to select based off of your class. So in this case, you want to try to choose your subclass based off of your earlier decisions. So if your character, for example, is a dwarven, like a dwarven soldier, and you choose the champion class. Maybe your character is going to make more sense being a devotee to Torag, or maybe even they're more of like a defensive dwarf, so that might select like your shield abilities from the champion class, things like that. You can also make your character choices based off of something that's interesting, even if it's not necessarily going to be the most effective. This doesn't necessarily mean that you're ineffective, but for example, it's like I might get more damage on each one of my turns if I'm wielding a greatsword, but I'm a warrior from Kadira, where greatswords aren't exactly common. I might do better using a falchion or a scimitar or something like that.
Yeah.
So maybe be willing to change your gear some, even if it's not necessarily the most optimal selection for whatever role that you're trying to take.
Choosing something more thematic.
Exactly. The same holds true for spellcasters. Don't think that you can get away with whatever just because you're a spellcaster. But like as a spellcaster, certainly like there are going to be some spells that are ubiquitous. Like you're always going to want to cast a fireball at some point. But
I mean, if you're playing a character that maybe was trained by the Winter Witches up in Irison, maybe you avoid fire spells.
Yeah.
In fact, I think if you're in Irison, fire spells are illegal in the Force there.
Maybe I don't recall that specific detail, but
only you can prevent forest fires.
Jordan, you beat me to the joke.
Yes, don't play an awakened bear.
You know what I should have done? They should have said only you can prevent forest fireballs.
Yep.
Oh my
would've been even better. Dang it.
But also keep in mind multi-classing and archetype options. And keep those open. So, this is the sort of thing where, many times your character may already have a background reason for being interested in some sort of subclass. Maybe they, they grew up and they were a bodyguard for a wizard. And so technically they're a fighter, but they've been kind of peeking over the wizard's shoulder all the time and like learning a bit of magic on the side just because it interests them. So maybe you have a character that, you're already like, well, they're a fighter, but I'm definitely going to take the multi-class wizard archetype. Maybe you want your character to be part of an organization. Maybe they train to be a Hell Knight, for most of their life because they're, Chelaxian and they want to, be part of the Chelaxian Empire or the Chelish Empire, I think is what they refer to it. And so they're like, Hell Knight, that's the one for me. And you can have that, you can kind of start ruminating on that while you're coming up with your class options.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, especially be open to the idea of taking one that you maybe didn't plan for in an adventure path, because some of the adventure paths actually do have some unique opportunities for specific archetypes or different feats that you might be able to take and things like that. So I in general don't really plan my characters super big, but in second edition there's some leeway is always good to get even further tied into the story.
You might find that there's an archetype or organization that becomes available to you that wasn't really around before, and if you decide your character is somebody that would join that, absolutely do it. Like, why not?
And expect us to go a little bit more in depth into archetypes and multi-classing everything in the second panel that we are doing tomorrow, same time, at 11 o'clock this time, but that'd be 9 o'clock Paizo time, I believe. 9 o'clock, yes. Paizo specific time.
Are we ready for the ABCs? I don't see a lot of ancestries, but I do like this cursed family undead sorcerer thing people are suggesting. That's really on brand for Ustalov.
That is leaning into the setting real good.
Captain Nemo says Ustalov is in his blood.
All right, let's do the cursed family for the background and sorcerer with the undead bloodline for our class, but we still don't have an ancestry. So what ancestry is
somebody
this,
said elf
I
character?
think
like Forlorn Elf. That's a good
Forlorn
idea.
Elf is kind of cool, yeah.
Yeah, for now we're probably going to stick with the ones that are currently available. Just, Dampier is really cool, but I don't think that that's actually been implemented in 2E yet.
And neither has Changeling yet.
Yeah,
which is unfortunate because those are both
really good
one
for
early, I guess.
very
yeah.
thematic for
for
Ustalav.
Yeah, but in this case, we're going to go ahead and go with Forlorn Elf. I think that's really good.
So Forlorn Elf,
Cursed Family.
Cursed Family. Sorry, I'm just staring at Jordan to be funny. Forlorn Elf, Cursed Family, Sorcerer with the Undead Bloodline. From Ustalav.
Yes.
Excellent. Sounds great. All
I'm
right.
gonna steal this character, y'all, because it sounds fun already.
I know. I think the audience is pandering to Heather.
Yeah, it sounds
They were like, her and her little goth girl would love this.
Somebody suggested Leshy Undead Sorcerer.
I
don't know how that's get justified in Ustalav, but I kind of like Leshy.
You're like a rotting plant person?
Yeah, it sounds like Heather now has a backup character for Tyrant's Grasp.
It's fine.
All right.
One thing I wanted to mention real quick is Daniel is talking about how it's harder to come with more interesting characters with the more bland ABC than exotic races, like a stock human soldier fighter. So, like, what would you suggest for something like that?
I mean, a lot of what makes a character dynamic isn't necessarily what they have on the sheet. It's what you do to implement those things. You can make a really interesting character that's just a human fighter if you implement things from the setting and, depending on your, I guess in second edition, it'd be the campaign background and things like that, and develop a really interesting backstory and a personality. That's what makes the characters dynamic, not necessarily their stats on the page.
That's true. I mean, if I'm thinking about a soldier fighter, I might think of someone who maybe you were a child soldier, and so you're dealing with the trauma of being a child soldier, and now you're an adult, and maybe you don't really want to be that anymore, but you keep getting pulled back into it, and so you kind of have the internal drama of, I have all these skills to kill people, but I hate that I have all these skills. And that makes you kind of interesting to play with.
There's also, I would say, a big difference between, say, like a fresh-faced recruit who just joined the military and a veteran who's been around for a while. Those can be two very different characters, and yet both would be a human soldier fighter.
One of the things that you can look at is also leaning into like both the things that Ross and Jessica were talking about there is leaning into your background and determining what being a soldier from your background depends on. Also, if you find one element of your character boring, try compensating with another element. So for instance, a human soldier fighter from Minkai is going to be vastly different than a human soldier fighter from Taldor, is going to be vastly different than a human soldier fighter from Katapesh. So depending on what you play with, you can also lean into your character's ancestry if you find your background or your class to be kind of static and boring to make it more interesting and diverse.
Absolutely. I agree. And,
so I think we still have development that we're going to talk about.
Yes, this is our extra step, which we actually started kind of touching on when we were talking just now.
Yes, we have the ABCDs.
Actually,
I've kind of taken over the...
You have. Before we get there, we have a handful of suggestions that are kind of interesting, so I want to talk about them. There's Revcon says that a corpse plant Leshy would be kind of like an undead Leshy. Rotha says that a gourd Leshy that people think is just a plant and that gets dressed up like a scarecrow might be kind of interesting.
Oh, wow. You'd be like the tiniest little scarecrow, because aren't they small-sized?
I don't know.
That would be adorable.
We also have
a horror movie that had something like that with the pumpkin head or whatever it was. It looked like a little kid that trick-or-treated.
Called Pumpkinhead?
No.
There is something.
Trick-or-treat.
Trick-or-treat's a thing. I feel like there's a lot.
Somebody said trick-or-treat, yes.
Is it trick-or-treat? Yeah.
Somebody said trick-or-treat, yeah.
All right. There's also
Sam, that's right. Okay.
There's also a handful of things that seem like just good advice. Think about who trained them or how did it influence their development. So, in the old campaign, Ultimate Campaign had kind of you rolled on those charts. And one of them was mentor or important figure in your past. So, like, bring some of that stuff in. And also think about deity and theology if you want to bring in more breadth to the influences. So maybe you're a fighter, but you follow Surun Ray, so you have like a whole thing that you kind of do as your code. That sort of thing.
Or maybe you became a soldier because you follow Caden Kalian and you just want to be a heroic person, you know? I don't know.
Yeah, I will say Ultimate Campaign is that one book that, like, if you're playing for 2nd edition and that's what you got into Pathfinder on, still pick it up because it does have this, like, kind of Mad Libs. You roll, you know, D20s, percentiles, all these things to kind of Mad Libs together a character. Yeah, and I've always found that to be really interesting, and at the end it gives you like background traits which wouldn't be applicable to 2nd edition, but the idea of just, you know, that unexpectedness if you need that inspiration, I've found some really interesting inspirations from that.
That's good. That's a good idea.
So do we want to go ahead and talk about development now?
Yes, I think so.
Would you like to handle that, Jess, or should I? Yeah, I had to jump into the captain's seat, and
as you do,
I'm willing to relinquish it.
I was going to say his favorite seat.
Well, development is one we came up with. It's not really part of the
development is kind of the like our added on for the ABCD. This is the part where you take all those things that you have on your stats and turn them into something dynamic. We just kind of decided to come up with development for that. This is a good spot to talk to your game master and be like, hey, I need a mentor. Is there a character in this adventure path that would suit a good mentor for? And the character that we've come up here, a forlorn elf with a cursed family who's an undead bloodline sorcerer. So, you know, Tarbafon, obviously.
I'm sure he had an influence in their lives, but I doubt that he was directly a mentor.
I mean, he whispered to them a lot, probably.
Not everyone in Ustalov who has to do with necromancy is a direct descendant of Tarbafon. I mean, come on.
Yeah. I mean, we don't know how much he got around.
We don't. But...
Wow, okay then. Anyway.
He could be like Genghis Khan up in here. I don't know.
The less you go on this, the better, I think. Oh, God. Anyway, Rick?
Usually when you reach the development point is when you want to really kind of flush out your character's backstory. So you take the elements that you got from your character's class. So for instance, you know, that the human soldier fighter that we were talking about a little bit earlier, just so I'm not diving too much in my own character concepts for our total thing. You know, if you're looking at, you know, I'm from Tian Sha, I have this background where I'm a soldier. So in that case, maybe I was trained as a samurai in Benkai. And then you bring in your class. So you're like, I'm a fighter that I focus on, you know, a lot of these fine precision movements, the beautiful dance that is, you know, the samurai fighting thing. And then you can develop your backstory of, you know, did I grow up as a, you know, in a, I can't remember the proper terminology for it in Japan, the manners, but basically a castle in Minkai. And, you know, why am I somewhere else where I am now? You know, if I'm in Absalom, what happened to my family? You know, why am I not there defending them? So you kind of have this chance to come up with a lot of the backstory and talk with your game master about it, where they can say, oh, well, there's this mercantile consortium that we may be dealing with. So then we can tie all of that in. This is also a great time to really delve into deciding representation. This is something that is always important in gaming in general, is including inclusivity and representation. So deciding, you know, what is your ethnicity, you know, character's sexual preference, a character's gender identity, things like that are very important to do during your development stage to kind of come in and decide, you know, what are the nuts and bolts, what are the fine details of this character once you've gotten past the establishing the foundation for them.
Because those choices are also going to influence about how you role play this character when you're when you sit down and play. So it's one of those things that you might want to already, like Rick said, have nailed down.
Additionally, make sure that, you know, especially if you're playing something long form like an adventure path or a module, maybe talk to fellow players, see kind of, you know, how do we know each other? Do we know each other? Do you want to be siblings, or do you want to be like best friends from way back, or whatever. And
siblings are always the best in. I know Jessica loves that one.
But
siblings are always a great in to tie in another character where it's like, even if I'm not really interested in this, my sister is, so I guess we're in.
I also like a husband-wife combo pack because that's kind of fun. But really, it could be anything. You could just be like besties, or you could be competitors. I think we once played a game where Jordan and I were competitors with one another.
So and it's kind of an interesting way to like tie people together. So everybody doesn't necessarily have to know everyone, but it's like, okay, so my character and Jess's characters are brother and sister, and Jess's character is best friends with Rachel's character, who knows Ross's character. And so everybody kind of knows one or two people in the group, but it's not one of those, hey, we've all been, childhood friends forever, which is also a thing you could do if you really wanted to. Everybody could know each other.
That's true.
But if you don't want to go that route, knowing at least one other person in the party makes it a lot easier for people to come together as a group.
That is true.
So definitely a great suggestion there, and just kind of tying your character in with the rest of the group. So do we want to move on to, or I believe we decided to just refer to these as our elevator pitches, or?
Well, I've got one last comment on that.
I want more of the Tarbathon angsty poetry that they've started in the chat, by the way.
Gracious. No, the thing that I find most interesting in your backstory is actually leaving gaps in your backstory. So I will use our soldier fighter, right? It's possible that, I'm not talking about something like him having amnesia necessarily, but leaving some things nebulous. So like I could say he has a mentor who taught him 4 or 5 years on the battlefield, who was his commander. And I don't necessarily name the commander. That gives the GM a way to introduce your commander as another character, maybe that you meet later in your adventure path or module. And there's times when like not knowing as a player is super rewarding, because then you're learning about your character, not just like you don't have a fully fleshed out backstory that like doesn't have any growth to it. Like you discover new things about yourself at the same time that maybe your character knew, but you as a player don't know.
Or like, your companion like your best friend in the military is MIA and you hadn't been able to find them or something. And then you find out what happened to them later,
and that's always fun. Like that, the best times that I've had doing games has been when I'm surprised and delighted as a player to find out something about my character.
That's always fun.
You can also do it. I've seen it done really well. The character believes something, but that's not the thing that's actually true. So like Heather and I played siblings once, and my character was hiding something from her character, and so he believed that our mother was like off in Chiliax, and then when that all came crashing down because she was actually dead, that created kind of some interesting role play, and so it's interesting. Secrets can be really interesting if they're done right in backstories.
I will add a caveat to that. If you're the game master, be careful when you're changing something that someone assumes pertaining towards their own character. Because if you do something like, okay, you actually thought that you were trained by this knight and everything, but secretly those were all just memories implanted in your head by an intellect devourer. And actually, you were this other person. And that usurps a character and also takes away the player's agency over their own character, and that's always it's a dangerous ground to step in. But that's on the GMing panel, which isn't this year.
Fair enough. All right, everyone. So I guess while we formulate some elevator pitches for this character, let's get a recap from Rachel on what we know so far about our character.
Okay.
All right. So far we know that the setting is going to be one of my favorite places, and I think we all figured this out, one of Heather's favorite places, Ustalav. Our kind of role in our eventual group will be the spellcaster. We have chosen a forlorn elf as our ancestry. Our background is cursed family. Is anybody else getting a fruits basket vibe, or is that just
a little bit?
A little bit. Yeah, now that you mention it.
I don't get that reference, but don't explain it to me. It's fine.
Yeah, we'll explain it to you offline.
It's fine. but I'm sure somebody in the chat knows that reference, and it'll make me happy. And then our class is going to be a sorcerer with the undead bloodline. As far as development, I don't know if we want to leave it up to chat ideas to come up with some background, like backstory stuff, or are we just going to come up with that all ourselves?
I think that's going to be part of our pitch. I think that's what we're pitching.
Okay. So yeah, then using that's what we got.
Okay.
All right.
All right.
I have a pitch, so I will go first, and I will see how this sits with everybody. Let me make myself big so you can see me, actually. All right. So, you're a forlorn elf. You're from Ustalav. You have the undead bloodline as a sorcerer. Here's your deal. Growing up, your family was always cursed. Everyone you loved always seemed to die. And then you could spontaneously bring them back. And so you started bringing back family members. And it wasn't quite the same because skeletons and zombies and the like aren't intelligent. But at least you weren't alone. And then you just kept getting kicked out of places, from place to place to place. And now you're just trying to find a family, dead or living. That's my pitch.
Okay.
Wow. Okay.
Fun idea.
This is the best part of this, by the way, because we're going to have very, very different takes on this, because that is very
All right.
different than I thought.
Oh my gosh.
I will offer up the almost the opposite here. Well, not the opposite, but a vastly different approach. So your character is the second-born daughter of a family of elves that fought against Tar-Baphon during the Shining Crusade, and your family was cursed that the second-born daughter would eventually bring ruin. And so the family over the past 800 years have killed the second-born daughter every time one was born.
Dang.
Except for your character's mother smuggled you out, where you were raised instead by a human family and then grew up watching everyone unfortunately around you pass. But you always feel this calling bringing you back. And deep down, upon reading about your family's history, you know that you will be eventually responsible for the downfall of your own family line.
Okay.
That is a different feel.
It's a serious dark take, but
Yeah.
that is super dark, man.
Okay. All right. I got one.
Okay.
So your family is a noble lineage that lived in Caliphos, and one of your ancestors got the bright idea to try to get rid of the vampires that actually live there and control the city in the background. And rather than eradicate your family, they just cursed the family. And so far, nothing really bad has happened. So everybody's like, okay, this is fine. And then you're born with these strange undead powers. And now the vampires of Caliphas are trying to get you to work with them to destroy the rest of your family with promises of unlocking your undead lineage.
Ooh.
Ooh, I like that one. That's fun.
Fancy.
all right.
Okay, I'm gonna lean into my own experience and my own dice luck with this one.
God, here we
My own
go.
experience as an undead sorcerer. Go.
Yeah, so your family has been cursed. Unfortunately I'm also pulling the Tar-Baphon thing. Fought against Tar-Baphon, was cursed with bad luck, as in such bad luck that your family has been destitute and completely unable to recover ever since. So you have been born with this undead bloodline due to we'll go with unknown mysterious. We'll just leave it nebulous because I like to always let the GM give you a background for it reason. But you are determined and set upon your mission to do whatever it takes to remove the curse from your family, no matter how many rules and morals you have to break along the way. It's your chaotic neutral.
Jordan including the alignment in his pitch.
But also because you're cursed with bad luck, if you're like me and you have bad dice luck, it's the curse. It's not you, it's the curse.
Oh, there you go.
That's the real deal for that.
And this
What a
character
horrible
always
night
rolls
to have
high
a
when
curse.
Jordan sits
Yeah.
down to play them.
Probably, yeah. This would be the one time that it rolls high.
Like a luck vampire.
Ooh.
Anyway.
Nom. Delicious luck.
Ross or Rachel?
Well, I'm wondering if we have time because there's only 10 minutes left.
We have time.
no.
Quickly,
Yeah, that's quick.
quickly.
Go fast. You're gonna have to do faster than we did.
You got like 2
Elevator pitch.
sentences.
I was kind of thinking almost a roguish take on it, and I mean that in the X-Men way, where you're a forlorn elf that has been cursed that everything you touch kind of falls apart, sort of
Wow.
thing. Or it causes bad luck and everything. So you kind of move around because the moment you get too close to, the people in the town or what you're trying to do, it all ends up falling apart, and they like see that you have these crazy powers and then drive you out of the town or something like
You
that.
are an Ustalav.
You are an
Yeah.
Ustalav. People are suspicious and weird. So
Although Ustalav's not really around anymore. Whatever.
Yeah, it is. Ustilav's still there.
It's there.
I guess.
It's like
They do have one of those
Transylvania's
boxes
still
that
there.
blast that's like break in case of riot, and they've just got pitchfork and torches inside of it.
Nice.
Anyway.
Gosh.
All right, Ross. Let's go.
Okay, so in true Ross fashion, I'm going to turn this entire thing on its head. So, all right, so get this. Your elf belongs to a family that was traveling through Ustalav. You were very young when this happened, but your family stumbled across a meeting of the Whispering Way.
Oh.
In order to prevent your family from talking
Those
about
jerks.
it, the Whispering Way used, of course, their necrotic powers to slay your family, leaving you alone. Somehow you managed to hide, but unfortunately, you have also become imbued with like necromantic powers because of the experience.
Mhm.
So now you find out as well about your family's curse, your family's former dealings against the Whispering Way, which your parents had no idea about. And now your goal is to take your curse to Tarbafon himself and, well, hopefully use your connection with the undead, curse him instead. A roaring rampage of
Ooh.
revenge.
Okay.
Okay. All right.
Okay, so we've got Jess's, where you have the ability to spontaneously bring people back and you keep getting kicked out. Rick's second-born daughter being cursed. Heather's noble family turning against their family. Jordan's trying to remove the curse by any means necessary.
Mhm.
Rach, cursed that everything they touch kind of falls apart. Ross comes across the Whispering Way and needs the help of Tarbafon. So
No.
out
Now,
of
it needs to
those,
destroy Tarbafon.
Yeah.
oh, sorry.
Seeks to destroy.
No, help Tarbafon. Always help No, I'm kidding.
So yes,
So everybody in the chats, pick who you like the best, and that's the character we'll kind of work with next panel tomorrow. You can just put our name, I guess, if you want to just be like, I like Rachel's, you can put Rach or whatever.
Can we do a poll? Do they have a poll thing in their Discord?
I don't think
Might be
so.
easier.
I think we tried to
well,
figure
the
it out.
Discord is also limited to a smaller number of people. Then,
Yes.
Oh, that's true.
All right. So,
yeah, just drop it in the chat, and we'll take all of this in, and then
Yeah,
we'll
we'll
just
do
kind
some
of
tally.
We'll look at both chats. So
Yes.
if you drop it in one, you don't necessarily have to drop it in the other. But
So while
okay,
you
and
guys,
I'm pulling the Discord one if somebody wants to pull the Twitch ones.
okay, while
Okay.
you guys do that, I can look at the Twitch one. There's a question in the Twitch chat, so we can discuss this while we kind of give people a chance to pick their favorite one. The question comes from RevCon. What would you do if a character levels and you don't like where it's growing? What's your best methods to kind of reinvigorate that character?
I have two thoughts on this.
I think one of my
one
thoughts
is-
will match Rick, but yeah.
Yeah, one of them is there's the retrain mechanics built
Yep.
into second edition. So if you really
Yeah.
don't like the way your character is going, you can probably come up with a good excuse for why your character is retraining and going in a new direction with it. The second one is, maybe examine why you don't like the direction that your character is going, and figure out whether or not, if it's you don't like the direction the character is going because it doesn't mesh with the story any longer, decide whether or not you want to continue going with that character, or whether or not you want to retire that character and bring in another character that makes more sense for it.
I think another thing you could do is you could certainly retrain if there were things about your character you didn't like. You wanted to take a different beat. might take some time and cost some gold or what have you, but you could retrain that character.
If your issue with the character is like, I've seen this before where I don't feel like I'm as involved in the story, bring it up to your GM, because one of the things that can really get you kind of your character reinvigorated into the story and re-involved is having some kind of something happen. Like either they've had a crisis of faith, they've had, they were too late to save somebody, and so it's got them back into, stopping the big bad evil guy. There's a lot of kind of events that can happen to draw you back in. Cause I know that I've had that happen when I've GM'd, where eventually everybody was like, what are we even doing? And that's the time that, for me as a GM, I was like, oh, I need to do something different to get you guys back into it. Maybe drop a hint on what's happening, or give you a clue to unstick you from the kind of like aimless way you're kind of wandering.
Yeah.
I didn't ask for this.
Well, I mean, work together. I think that's one of the best answers we can have is, work with everybody else with you. I mean,
you can always talk to the other players and be like, hey, my character is not really feeling this. And maybe all you really need to do is sit down and have a heart-to-heart in character, some role-playing moments, and maybe that'll help make you feel reattached to the story. If it's an issue with your build, the best thing to do is retrain.
Yeah.
But if it's a motivational thing as far as role playing, like everybody else said, either talk to your game master, talk to the other players, and then if you really can't work it out, retire the character if you have to, and make a new character that you'll think you'll enjoy playing more, or will work with the setting or whatever better. If you've listened to our podcast, we've had that happen, and we've had that happen in games where we're off air as well, where somebody's decided this isn't working anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So
somebody in the Twitch suggests for character motivation stagnation, players could go back to create a second level of background drama that feeds into what's already been created.
Yeah.
Go back and tweak the backstory a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, again, that would be something, of course, bring that up with your game master, just in case they already have a direction that they're planning on going with your backstory. That's definitely a good way to go. And a lot of what everyone's kind of said pertaining towards involving other characters and everything is an important aspect, an important kind of caveat to creating a dynamic character is it kind of comes into creating a dynamic group. So, if there's one character in the group that doesn't necessarily blend well or is a little bit, flat, a lot of times it's a good idea to work with that person and determine a means by which to kind of involve both of your characters or the elements of your characters together to make it a more enjoyable experience for everyone.
Yeah, I agree. Okay.
So I guess are we wrapping this up?
I think so.
Yeah, what do we end up with?
All right, I put the totals from Twitch in the chat for you, Rachel.
Okay. Well, I know who won right off the bat.
It's very apparent looking at the chat.
Rick got another 5 votes on ours.
Oh my gosh, Rick.
We're going with second daughter.
Yeah. You know what? I got a vote at least, so I'm happy.
Even on the board. Yay.
Yeah. I really like that one, Rick, honestly. I think that's really cool.
No, I was listening to that and I was like, I think I know what the winner is.
On mine, Jess got 1, Rick got 5, Heather got 1.
Yep.
Yeah, Rick got 3 from the Twitch, and I got 1, and Ross got 1, and Rachel got 1.
Nobody wants to roleplay bad luck. Dang.
No, it's not fun. That's like asking for it, man.
But
it hits too close to home. That's the problem.
I can never escape.
We are almost out of time here, but join us tomorrow at the same time this panel started, I believe, right?
Yes, and we will do the same thing. So essentially, we are going to be simultaneously Twitch streaming and streaming to our Discord. So it'll work exactly the way it's working right now. So hopefully we can mitigate some of the kind of issues we had when this panel started.
And we're going to further develop this character y'all helped us create, and kind of talk about how to role play a dynamic character and how to bring what you've done with your backstory and your stats to life in a game.
Which is the fun part.
Thank you so much for joining us. We hope that all of you are having a wonderful PaizoCon 2020 online, and go out there, enjoy some games, have some fun, and check back in with us tomorrow at 9 a.m. Pacific time for continued role-playing a dynamic character in tabletop gaming.
All right.
We look
Bye,
forward to
everybody.
seeing y'all.
Oh,
Buddy.
hey, somebody
Bethel.
said that we're
Oh,
supposed to
somebody
be here
said that-
from 9 to
Oh, is it
11.
supposed to be 9 to 11?
No, we're not 9 to 11.
9/11. Okay.
Oh,
No.
okay.
All
wish.
right.
We're having
Well,
so much
we
fun.
will see you
Yeah.
guys
Yeah,
tomorrow.
we'll have to figure out how that
All right.
happens.
Bye.
Bye everyone.